Welcome to IAB Canada's podcast, The Business of Digital.
Within hours.
So I am sitting here now with Marc, with a C, Brasset, in Vancouver on the same day that we had our Vancouver brand safety event. And I'm so lucky to be spending these minutes with you to talk about developments in the audio world of online advertising. Marc, I'm wondering, how long have you been in this space, and what brought you to this space, and just to get a little bit of background.
For sure. Yeah. So we started in summer of 2016 is when we first got the idea of branching out into audio, and that was really
From where?
Well, okay, so interesting. So our company, Western Media Group, we have a long history of media sales. So we started off primarily with out-of-home, television, radio, and selling people out-of-market stations, essentially, that couldn't afford to have a salesperson representing them exclusively in the Western market, but put them all together, and there's enough to support a third-party company. So, and our founder, our president, he's been a radio guy for 30, 40 years, something like that.
Awesome.
Not to age him or anything, but he's been around for a while. And then we moved into digital. So we started off by selling ad networks primarily, and got into that business through various relationships. And then when you hired me, I was, worked there for about 10 minutes and said, okay, well, we're going to be doing some programmatic stuff.
Awesome.
Because, just understanding that programmatic is the easiest way to achieve scale in digital advertising. So we started doing that in 2011, and we eventually started trading ourselves in 2014. So having had this under control having this experience with it, this sort of pioneers in the Western part of the country, and frankly, back in 2011, a lot of people didn't even know what programmatic was, right? The conversations we were having back then was a lot more about what is programmatic. How do you buy this way? How does this, what are the advantages? Like, how does it enable you to achieve audiences at scale? What are the price advantages, right? So those types of ideas, those kinds of conversations eventually just got replaced by, you're just another company, managing these kinds of services, which, we think we have our own unique twist on,
Right.
But looking for something, new, right? So what else can we do programmatically, and what else can we do, from an advertising perspective, that's taking advantage of developments in digital. So that's when we found the programmatic audio opportunity, and we call it programmatic audio. I prefer to call it streaming audio, because essentially that's what we're doing. We're inserting ads into streaming audio services. Yeah.
So when you say, can you give me an example? So give me an example of the streaming experience the way it is today, or where it started from. So was there some sort of an evolution even in that piece of it? I know you started in 2016, which is fairly recent. So have there been changes even in that short, the 2 years or a year and a half?
For sure, yeah. There have been huge changes actually in Canada. I don't think that there's been wholesale changes from the way that streaming audio and dynamic audio ad insertion in streaming services has happened. But streaming programmatic audio, inserting audio ads programmatically into a stream happened in about 2012. So that's when the first two programmatic audio ad exchanges were developed. That's AdWave, which is AdsWiz's product, and A2X, which is Triton Digital's product. So we're not talking about, I mean, programmatic as a whole has started in about, 2009?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I mean,
Yep.
that's coming up on 9 years old, but we're only, it's a lot newer for audio ads. So audio ads back then in Canada was a question of scale. We didn't have as many streaming services on board. The streaming, the adoption by Canadians wasn't as large either. So I think what we've seen in the short time that we've been involved is really a big growth in terms of users, number of users, like user behavior, how people are consuming audio. I know I'm a later convert to streaming audio. I have a thing for MP3s, and just changing that behavior.
It's made a big impact.
Yeah, for
so,
sure.
And what? So, are people streaming on their mobiles, or like what's the biggest device that's being used right now for streaming, in your view and in your business?
So that's very good point, because mobile devices are far and away the most popular devices for streaming audio. So,
through apps or through
Yeah.
or the channels?
Yeah, primarily through apps.
Yeah.
I mean, you can stream through web-based browsers as well, but I don't think that people are doing that in mobile devices specifically. I think even on computers, it's more done through apps, I believe. I don't have the numbers to back that up, but certainly that would be the way to do it. So, and there are actually some weird, bizarre chains of ways that people are consuming their audio. So, like, you might be listening through Apple Music, which is some radio station.
Right.
So,
of course.
which is super
Channels
interesting.
within channels.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that and frankly
who's monetizing those? So is because that's an interesting view of the ecosystem. So if you're streaming a radio station within, say, an iTunes radio station, where does the buck stop, or where does it land, so to speak?
It's tricky for me to talk about what Apple's doing
Right.
specifically, but
Yeah.
I mean, if you're listening to a radio station through TuneIn Radio, then it's going to be TuneIn that's making
Okay,
the money.
so they're monetizing it.
They're monetizing it now.
Okay.
That's the other big development that's happened, and that's very, very recent. It was either December or January when Rogers announced that they are going to be doing dynamic audio ad insertion. So, in other words, if you're listening to the Rogers radio station on the radio,
Right.
you're going to be hearing one set of ads. If you're listening to it programmatically, you could be served any ad. It's not necessarily going to be what is being broadcast over the terrestrial signal.
Oh, that's really exciting, and
Huge.
hopefully, and my hope is that as we were talking this morning at our brand safety event, that the quality of the actual ads ends up being up to par. Especially from an audio standpoint, I was a little shocked when I started to listen to satellite radio. I think you and I have talked about this in the past, but just this I don't know where these ads are coming from and who thinks they're a good idea. And certainly the stations that I'm listening to, I sometimes scratch my head and wonder, how can you let these ads be anywhere close to your content? So, I'm sure that, the type of streaming and the type of technology and the service offering that you're talking about is probably a little bit more on the premium end, although you did mention scale. So how is this something that you see being, cherry picked and carefully executed, or do you see it being eventually a self-serve platform type of environment like you see on the sort of walled gardens that people talk about?
So, wow, okay, there's a whole bunch,
there's a lot
of things
there.
in there.
I'm
So
sorry.
let's take
I'm
that.
just
Before
eager.
I get into that, I want to talk about something that you said this morning at the brand event,
Okay.
which is the way that the digital advertising industry has grown up is basically starting from this really bad place, which is where we're giving stuff away for free.
Right.
And I think that depending on how you look at it, you can say that Rogers is in for some serious issues when advertisers find out that what they previously were getting, which is they pay for an ad, they get it on the terrestrial broadcast, plus they get everybody who's listening to that ad on their computers or streaming through their devices or through the radio player app or whatever it is.
As a companion.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So
Yeah.
that
For added value. Yeah.
all of a sudden they're getting that digital stuff taken away from them. So I think that's going to be, I think there's going to be some friction there, and there's going to be some adjustments.
Yeah.
But having said that, we're in a much different place than we were many years ago, and because we have pure play streamers that have been using programmatic audio ads for a while now, there will be, I think there's a precedent there. In terms of, are we talking more of a long tail kind of idea? Not so much, and I think that is because audio is way more expensive to produce than web pages, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can throw up a web page.
Sure.
I mean, domain squatters, right? Like, I mean, that have, similar looking domain to something reputable, and
Right.
people show up there, they serve them an ad, and they're like, hey, we made our whatever
Right.
fractions of pennies. I mean, that's cheap and easy to do. Not so much in audio. Audio, there are real hard costs involved with licensing music or producing content. This is not.
And maybe this is what's motivating, or what is responsible for the poor quality of ads that I'm hearing on these satellite radio channels, right? So I'm talking, these are mostly, soliloquy style, ads. They're, sometimes they're 30 seconds long of just, the owner of the business, talking about, their mattresses or whatever it is. And you're kind of, it leaves you with a bit of a head scratch because of the fact that, that this was made, on the one hand, these brands are getting access, which is a good thing, right? So we believe, obviously, certainly the IAB does, that advertising should be super accessible to every brand. But it's just about the matching of the content with the editorial, so to speak. So, and I don't even know, programming, sorry, with the audio programming with the audio ads, because sometimes even the quality of the ad itself is just so different, and so polar to the quality of the programming. So it's just, I worry about that a little bit from a brand safety standpoint, from the broadcaster side, if it goes too long tail and it goes through programmatic channels that are maybe not manned as well as they could be.
Yeah, I think the fact that there's going to be there's a limited supply in not to trash digital banner ads, but there is an unlimited supply. You can serve a banner ad on a website pretty much to anybody at any time. But within audio, it's a much smaller pool there. I think that's part of what pushes up the pricing, and the content is generally much higher quality. We're generally talking about pure play streamers. We now we're getting broadcasters in as well, which is fantastic, because we do need that Canadian content. Canadians like to buy Canadian media, right? So
Right.
this is going to help with that. And I think that yes, for sure, this is going to happen on multiple platforms. In other words, there are self-serve options out there, but you are going to need somebody who's familiar with programmatic, somebody who's able to run those campaigns on a DSP.
And when you look at, just sort of switching to the creative questions here, when you're looking at audio creative, is it similar to what we've been telling our video advertisers to do, where it's just, please don't repurpose your content for the digital channel. Please don't use your 30-second ad and just slap it on TrueView. Maybe actually put some effort into it. Is that the same story for audio, or is it a little bit different?
I think it's a little bit different. So the majority of the campaigns that we've been involved with, like where we actually, let me talk for a second about what we do. So we operate the A2X ad exchange in Canada. That means we're responsible for promoting that particular exchange. We're, go out to talk to trading desks and other professionals who are ready to plug in and start running ads, talk to agencies and advertisers about why they should be using audio ads, streaming ads and streaming audio services, and generally just talking about the whole channel. We also do managed service campaigns for display and video and mobile and all that, but also specifically on audio channels. So when we get involved with the creative, that would be on the managed service campaigns. So we have production house that we can work with in order to build creative, which is very, very cost effective. But for the most part, when clients come to us with creative pre-built, it's generally a repurposed radio ad. And
that's okay. That's okay, yeah.
Because if you think about the format, is very different than video.
It's audio, yeah.
It's just, you're not like a video, you're like, okay, I want to watch this, this video, this content that, it's the worst. And, to your point about TrueView, the worst is you watch a 30-second ad before you watch a 10-second clip about a cat. That's
the bane of hockey fans' existence. Right.
the value exchange in that situation is not equitable. Like the 30 seconds you put into it, you don't get that back in the 10 seconds of video that you actually get to watch, right? In audio, it's very different. When you listen to a series of songs, a block of songs, there's a natural break. You hear an ad, and then you resume that, in the next block. And that behavior is well established with radio.
It's the cleansing of the ear palate, the auditory palate.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you look at the online channel, though, one of the things that attracts so many marketers, there's a great McKinsey report that talks about the fact that advertisers are more likely to advertise in channels that are measurable. Period. It's not necessarily whether or not they're effective; it's just that they're measurable.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure that audio must be a big draw, but when you're in the audio environment, can you explain a little bit about how the metrics work, how the cost, how the pricing structure works, and then also when you're in an online environment, is it more of a direct response environment and sort of proposition to the advertiser?
Okay, so very interesting opportunities there are now is to work with audio ads that are interactive. So, this is right at the forefront of what's happening. There's some, as I was saying, most people are listening on their mobile devices. So there's like some shake the device to receive information. There have been some ads where you can actually talk to the ad itself and be engaged in that way. So, the opportunity will go beyond just the radio ads that we currently are seeing. To your point about measurement, I think anybody who's doing any kind of digital ad should always be testing their creative to make sure that whatever they have going on is the best possible version of what they're trying to say. So,
but what does that mean? What does good look like? Or like what's the metric?
Yeah, so the metric, we're talking CPMs, right? Cost per thousand, that's the currency. But anything you can measure with audio, right? So completed listens, are you turning people off, right? Till they shut down the whole service because they don't want to hear your ad. So, that's one. You can serve impression trackers with the audio ad. That allows you to track site visits, conversions, those types of things.
With the same kind of cookie-ish windows, right? Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and
that's great.
The thing to be, I think.
What are those? Hear-throughs?
Yeah, hear-throughs. Yeah, listen-throughs.
Awesome.
I don't think there's a term for it yet, but I'm going to call it listen-throughs. So let's get on board with that.
Okay, I'll do that. Oh yeah, listen-throughs, not hear-throughs.
Yeah. So, but I think the real challenge is, and this is not. The real challenge, I think, for digital marketers as a whole, as you were talking about, people like to buy. I hadn't heard that before, but I totally makes so much sense, right? Like, I can measure it. It must be good, right? So I want to do that because I can get better, right? And I think that the problem is that we want to do it, but we kind of don't know how. The whole attribution mess out there, right? Like, how many campaigns are still using last click? Right? And audio is going to look really bad if you use those metrics because nobody's clicking. There's companion banners.
But how does non-digital, I want to stop you there because how does non-digital video look right now? Right? So, again, here we are, 2018, and we're back defending audio because it's measurable against audio that hasn't been measurable, unless I'm missing something, for decades. So are the expectations of people coming into this, the digital realm of audio, do you think they're in line? Like, what do you think?
No, I think that for sure the clients.
Is it going to be a shocker?
No, I don't think so. Like, for sure, the majority of the clients that we've been dealing with have been very open to, hey, this is about branding. We're not looking for. We want to track conversions, but we're not expecting it to be the primary driver of the campaign, right?
Great.
And it's like, yeah, great. I mean, that's totally it. I mean, I think the advantages are, okay, so Spotify did some research 1 or 2 years ago, and they said, hey, look at this, like, audio ads are way better at driving purchase intent and information intent than regular banner ads. Like, hey, that makes sense, and that's a good use of it. And if you think about the way that radio works, and the way that audio works is very similar, right? It's a frequency medium. I mean, I listen to the ad-supported version of streaming services because I'm very interested in how the advertising takes place in there, right?
Yeah.
So, and we do see all kinds of, I hear the same ads over and over and over again. I mean...
Well, the products.
There was, like, before the Super Bowl, there was a Super Bowl campaign for Frank's Red Hot sauce that, I probably heard it every 10 minutes. Well, that's exaggeration, but I probably heard it, 4 to 5 times a day. And yeah,
Oh, that's kind of interesting. So do you think that, because today we talked about frequency capping being a bit of an issue on the display side, do you think that in audio we're going to start seeing people upping the frequency capping, right? So
I think we should.
That's kind of cool. Yeah.
I don't think it was bad that I heard that ad. That makes sense. Like, I personally didn't. It was an oddly engaging ad. That the thing that got me was the way that the guy talked. He's like, his line was, "It's like surround taste for my mouth," and I just every time, like, I think people in my office thought I was crazy because I just kept saying, "In my mouth," like. The way he said that, like, every time he said it, I was like, I wanted to say it with him because it was so interesting the way he said it.
Okay, but have you bought?
No, I haven't bought Frank's. hasn't closed the loop on the conversion yet.
Oh my God!
But
right.
here's
be in your fridge.
In my fridge. Yeah, that's it. But here's the thing is, about that is that they should be paying attention to frequency caps. I don't know if they are. I think that's the difference between buying programmatically, where you have a larger pool of multiple streamers that you can take
reach.
advantage of.
Sorry, reach.
Yeah. And so it allows you to put, hey, I'm going to put a frequency cap on, and when I run a campaign, I usually cap it at 1 ad for 3 hours, unless that's my default, unless somebody has a better idea. If the client's like, oh, I have a client that is running a campaign, and they're like, I want 3 ads per day. I'm like, sure, I can, set that as your frequency cap. That's no problem. Now, the challenge being that in certain environments, we don't necessarily track the cookies, which allows us, has trouble with the frequency capping. So it's not going to be 100% of the time that you're actually going to manage to cap that. So, and of course, there's cross-device. So if I'm listening on my phone and I get to work and I'm put my phone away and turn on my laptop, or and this is something else we can talk about or I get home and I start listening on my smart speaker. Those aren't necessarily linked, those devices.
Right. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned Spotify did some research. Is there other research that you think we need, or that is out there that is already starting to tap what environments are appropriate for what kind of audio ads? Do you know what I mean? Because there's got to be, and before we started recording this afternoon, you and I were talking a little bit about, inserting ads into podcasts as opposed to just music or news. So do you think that there's going to be first of all, an explosion of different opportunities for types and streams of content? And also, do you think that one may be more effective than another, or how do you think that's going to look? How do you think that's going to work out?
For sure, I think there will. Well, so my understanding is that the IAB in the U.S. is working on standardizing music or genres.
Yes. Yeah.
So that once that is standardized, then it can pass in the bid request, right? And so it's going to be a lot more straightforward for people to make those types of decisions.
Yeah, and have visibility into the research. So if we're using the same taxonomy, then at least we can, start to call it apples to apples.
Right, and I think once that's done, then you're going to, these things, generally speaking, are incredibly personal, right? Like, not personal from the individual, but personal, like, for the individual campaign.
Yeah.
So we can, you start to test and see what's working, what's driving results, like pre-roll versus mid-roll versus, musical genre versus talk versus news, what are the types of things that are going to register on the success of the campaign. And I think that also works from the perspective of, in the same way that it's like, who's going to respond best to this ad? Well, this is my target audience. Well, turns out that this other audience is actually responding better to your ad and actually driving more results. Those types of learnings that we get. I mean, we're going to see that in audio as well. So I think that we, in terms of podcasts versus streaming music versus news reports or whatever those audio signals are, I think right now it's a matter of just like, let's make sure that the campaign aligns with the type of product that we're doing. Now, when we talk about podcasts, which is very meta, talking about a podcast on a podcast, is most podcasts at this point are downloaded, so we don't have the same level.
Dynamic, like that,
yeah, it's not programmatic and it's not happening in real time. There are measures in place that'll change that in the future. Like, in other words, like, when you download it, there will be an opportunity to insert the ad at that point.
At the time of download, yeah.
So those kinds of things will...
Well, that's kind of like print, wouldn't it be? Because once it's downloaded, right? I mean, it's there, it's done. So I wonder if there's like a...
Yeah, I mean, personally...
You only listen to it once, but,
You hear the ad?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And then, the IAB has set up an audio committee, and I think that there's going to be some outputs coming out of there. I know that we're paying attention to what's going on in the U.S. I think, sadly we are kind of running out of time, but I did want to ask, what do you think the future holds? And there's a lot of things that are happening right now, and privacy, the GDPR, people talking about consent and opt-in, and and then this polarity between that conversation and this notion of suddenly being able to talk to your ad, and having some sort of a sound enablement on these ads. Do we have to start thinking about things like that, and what how to program, how to manage things like consumer issues like privacy and annoying ads, skippable ads, all those types of things. What do you think is going to be the biggest threat and the biggest opportunity?
I don't see that personally. The way I see that, speaking to the ad or shaking your device for the ad to respond to the ad, I mean, to me that's analogous to a click. That's somebody responding to the ad. That's not tracking their personal information.
But is that monetized? Like, can that be
sure?
And here's where I'm going with it. Can it be gamed? Just like a click, right? So, because every time we come up with something new, we manage to destroy it or attract fraudsters, right? So, like, what's the thing going to be for audio?
So I talk about this sometimes, and people say you're using the wrong. You shouldn't use that terminology, but I'm going to go back to it because of what I'm used to talking about. But if we talk about the economy of this situation, so if I'm a listener, or I'm a user, how many web pages can I consume in 10 minutes, right? Like, if I'm a bot, it's going to be 100 times that.
Sure.
Well, it doesn't matter if I'm a bot or a human. I can only listen to one audio signal play at the pace it's playing. So, by its very nature, it's less inclined to. There's less involved for less opportunity for bots.
It to be gamed.
Yeah, I mean, you can have bots that listen to streams, but I mean, it's not like, how many ads can a bot click on in a minute, right? Hundreds. Well, you're going to have to sit there and play through this long signal before you get the chance to click on the ad. So it's by nature, it's less bot friendly. But in terms of what's happening in the future or what's to come, I mean, I think one thing that we have to kind of think about is a screenless internet. So the rise of voice assistants and smart speakers, the way that people are consuming streaming audio now to a large degree, the phone is in their pocket. So they're not looking at the screen; they're just listening to the signal and
theater of the mind.
Literally, yeah, exactly.
Totally. Yeah,
so opportunities, I think, are going to be, I was just reading a post today about how personal assistants respond to search results, right? So you don't have that same marketplace that you do in Google AdWords when, somebody goes to the internet and types in trip to Toronto, right? And then you say, oh, okay, let's bid on that, right? If you say to your personal assistant, hey, find me a trip to Toronto, it's going to do what it's going to do. And so it's going to, if we took search away, Google would have a serious problem making its financials. And I don't think that's going to go away. I just think that we're going to see a shift in behavior towards people who are consuming a lot of internet time without a screen. And as these personal assistants, these devices that allow us to do that, have to work out how that's going to be monetized. But as it stands right now, the simplest and easiest way to monetize that is through streaming audio. Because one of the activities that people do with their smart speakers, for example, is listening to music. And if you can insert ads into that, that's a way of finding, putting an ad into that time that people are spending with the internet that way. Now, the other nice thing is that it is completely optional. They don't have to listen to ads. They can pony up the whatever it is, $10 a month to go ad free, and many people will choose to do that.
Wow. So I have you've just inspired another question. One more, last one. Encore. What I just talked to Joni Joyner. And she was explaining that she used to work for AdGear, and AdGear sold itself to Samsung, right? And because Samsung was going to start inserting ads into all their smart devices. And I wonder what this means for audio and whether or not there's going to be a hardware game that's going to start emerging out of this, right? So that it's controlled by, when you follow the online advertising situation right now, people are starting to get, a little bit not concerned, but they're watching, wait a minute, is it the browsers that are going to own the conch? They're going to own the power? Is it going to be the carriers, the telcos? Are they going to start owning the data and the entryways for ads? Do you see there being other players entering into the audio arena, or that may, you may not see them today in a great sort of mass, but that might enter somehow? Is there always that opportunity?
Yeah, I think for sure
self-driving cars, or
exactly the
IoT,
example I was going to talk about.
Oh, really? Okay.
I was going to say when it comes to within connected cars, right? There are tons of opportunities there for the car to establish, the manufacturers, in the same way that Apple really controls what happens on their devices, Honda or Toyota, these
could white label presumably some sort of system,
for sure, and then they
really
could force that through and say, okay, we're Tesla doesn't come with a radio. It has no radio in the car, right?
Yeah.
It could easily own that opportunity, right? And it could monetize that in its own way. It could be in charge of inserting ads. Now, the other thing in terms of the Internet of Things, that's another huge opportunity. You think about connected fridges. Why not have your fridge being able to serve you an ad to say, hey, you're out of milk. Do you want me to order you some from Safeway, or insert advertiser name there, right?
I notice you're always buying this brand, but maybe you should give this one a chance. It doesn't have as much lactose or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge opportunity for people, in the same way that I can see that working very similar to search. And just what device do you want? I want fridges. Well, what's your message, and what's the trigger? People who are low on milk, right?
Craziness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really it's exciting.
Happen.
And one of the things that was discussed, it was not this last ALM, but it was the 2017 January ALM in Florida, and Verizon did a good talk on. There was a fireside chat, and it was the CMO of Verizon, and somebody had asked, "What, where are you spending your time? What is what's Verizon really concerned about?" And she responded, "We're working on fleets." The fleet business, right? So, again, that connectivity, owning the channel, owning the gateway, having some sort of a product that you can white label, that you can resell and get that scale, right? Because it occurs to me that, everybody is after that scale, and that, the owning the pipelines. So, and audio is from what you're describing, is going to be a massive opportunity as we move away from screens.
I think so. Yeah,
fascinating.
I mean, and the other opportunity is the idea of audio ads in public places. So audio out of home. So you dynamically insert audio ads into the sound system at the gym. That could be a whole new advertising revenue stream that hasn't been thought of yet.
Fascinating, Mark, and we're so happy to have you not only as a council member here at West for IAB Canada, but also for your participation in the other committees, like the audio committee, and I'm sure you'll be joining all of the other ones as they start to pop up. But your contribution has just been incredible, and hopefully we'll talk again in maybe a couple of months and get an update on where all this sits.
Yeah, so. Fantastic. Well, thanks very much for having me join you in your podcast.
All right, have a great afternoon.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks for joining us on IAB Canada's podcast, The Business of Digital.